All right, let's spend the next few minutes upgrading the single most powerful asset you will ever own, your brain. We live in an age that doesn't really reward muscle power anymore. It rewards mind power. So let's get into it. And, that's not just some nice, fluffy sentiment. Thomas Watson, the guy who founded IBM, said this right after his entire factory burned to the ground. He knew the buildings and machines were all replaceable, but the thinking power of his team, that was absolutely priceless. And that idea has never been more true than it is right now. So what are we actually working with here? 100 trillion connections. That's the estimated number of connections between the cells in your brain. Now, to put that into perspective, there are more connection points inside your head than there are stars in our entire galaxy. That potential is just sitting there, waiting to be unlocked. So here's the big shift, the really crucial thing to get. The rules for success have completely changed. We've left behind an era that valued physical strength, and we've walked right into one that values mental agility. Just look at this contrast. It says it all. In the industrial age, you were hired for what your hands could build. Success was all about brawn. But today, in the information age, you're hired for how you think, your ability to solve problems, to innovate, to make smart decisions. Well, that's the new currency. It's a total flip from brawn to brain power. Okay, so how do we actually make our brains work better for us? Well, think of it like a software update for your mind. We're going to move away from the default settings, the ones that are often kind of buggy, and install a high-performance mental operating system. And this slide, it just lays out the difference perfectly. Untrained thinking is full of these bugs. Doubt, fear. It's like imagining a simple flat tire is somehow going to lead to this huge, dramatic confrontation. But a trained mind, that comes with some incredible features, focus, confidence, and a ton of creativity. You stop just reacting to life, and you start actively creating it. This brings us to something the source material calls yo-yo thinking. That swing from thinking things are absolutely amazing one minute to thinking they're a total disaster the next. This quote right here is the antidote. It comes from a great story about a farmer who has a run of both good and bad luck. And each time something happens, a wise man just replies, maybe so, maybe not. It's such a great reminder that things are rarely as black and white as our untrained minds want us to believe. So what's actually holding us back? Well, a lot of the time, it's these common roadblocks that we put in our own way. We build these walls of assumption instead of just looking for the facts. We get stuck in a rut, falling back on the same old, lazy thought patterns. We get scared of different viewpoints. And maybe worst of all, we let other people do our thinking for us. These are the blocks that stop our mental OS from running at full speed. So, what's the fix? It's actually surprisingly simple. Think like a child again. See, a child's brain has more neural connections than an adult's because they haven't learned yet what's supposedly impossible. They're just open, they're curious, they're not judging everything. Recapturing that sense of wonder is the absolute key to breaking down our mental blocks. Okay, so our mental operating system is upgraded. Now it's time to install some really powerful apps. These are the specific tools and techniques we can use to handle all kinds of mental tasks, everything from memory to creativity. Our toolkit really starts with understanding our two fundamental modes of thinking. Your left brain, that's your inner analyst. It's logical, it's sequential, it loves facts. Your right brain is your inner artist. It's intuitive, visual, and imaginative. Now, the trick isn't to pick a favorite. The real magic happens when you get them to work together. Let's look at a really practical app for your memory. It's called the PEG system. Now, I know it sounds a little technical, but trust me, it's just a super creative way to turn boring numbers into a story you actually can't forget, all by linking them to rhyming words. Here's exactly how it works. Let's say you need to remember the number 302187. You just assign these rhyming PEG words, 3 is knee, 8 is gate, 7 is heaven, and so on. Then you create the most ridiculous story you can think of. Seriously, the sillier it is, the more your creative right brain gets fired up, which makes it way easier for your logical left brain to recall the sequence. You'll remember that story long after you've forgotten the number itself. So now for the other side of our toolkit, creativity. This classic Zen question is basically designed to break your logical mind. There's no single right answer here. The whole point is to push you past linear thinking and into a much more creative, open space. So how do we actually get there? Well, the source material gives us some simple, actionable ways to boost creativity. Start by asking why all the time, just like a 4-year-old. Play with ideas like they're building blocks without any judgment. Try connecting two totally unrelated things, say a coffee cup and a rocket ship, and just see what happens. And honestly, laugh more. Humor literally jolts your brain out of its old tired pattern. All right, let's pull all of this together. How do logic and creativity actually team up in the real world? Well, the perfect example is a good old-fashioned brainstorming session. Now, the rules of brainstorming are specifically designed to fire up that right brain creativity first. The most important rule of all is no evaluation. You have to suspend all judgment to let every single idea, especially the really wild ones, come out. At this stage, you're going for quantity over quality. And here's a fantastic story of this in action. So a power company had this really serious problem. Heavy ice was building up on their power lines way up in the mountains. Sending linemen up those icy pylons was incredibly dangerous, it was slow, and it was costing them a fortune. They were completely stuck. So during a brainstorming session, after getting absolutely nowhere with the logical ideas, someone just threw this out there, this completely absurd suggestion. They joked about putting pots of honey on top of the pylons to get bears to climb up and shake the lines. I mean, it was a silly, illogical, pure right brain idea. But that illogical idea was the absolute key. The talk about bears led to talk about using helicopters to place the honey pots. And that's when someone remembered the powerful vibrations from a helicopter's rotors. And boom, that was the breakthrough. The silly, right-brained idea about bears sparked a brand new connection, which led to a perfectly logical and brilliant solution. Just use the downdraft from a helicopter to shake the ice clean off the lines. So that leaves us with this. The human brain, your brain, is capable of these incredible feats of logic, memory, and creativity. It can turn a silly joke about bears into a life-saving innovation. It really is the most powerful tool in the universe.